Feints, heads, tails, leftover stuff. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about what you can do with them at home and why I actually don't do that, what I do instead. That's coming up. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse and this is Still It, the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. So, Feints guys. First up, I want to describe the process or the way that most people deal with their feints, and I guess the most widely suggested way to go about things. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to tell you why I don't do that in my situation and what I do instead. All right, so here goes. As you know, guys, we tend to break a run down into different cuts. We segment it out and we selectively choose which parts of those runs we're going to keep, because we have the ability to influence the flavor of the final product by doing so. So why would we not? At the beginning of the run, if you want to break it down into fours and heads, or just call it heads, come off first. Then the hearts, what we keep, you know, pretty much all of the quote unquote good stuff. And then at the tail end, funnily enough, tails. So those heads and those tails, we're going to run into a position where some of that product we don't want to put into the final product right now, and that's what we call feint. So all of those things collected together and put back in to some sort of collecting vessel. So we have a jar, a keg, a bottle, whatever it happens to be of feints. What are we going to do with that stuff? First of all, let's talk safety. Yes, I do take a small portion of every run from the beginning of a run and call it fours or four shots or whatever you want to call it. I take a little bit and I just biff it. When I say biff it, I don't actually biff it. I just remove it from the ecosystem of anything that would ever be ingested. So I take it and I put it in another bottle labeled poison, and I use it for cleaning, for starting fires, for whatever you want to use. You know, anything that you would use something like isopropyl alcohol or methylated spirits for, most of the time you can use that stuff for as well. That gets taken out of the equation. Then we have the heads and the tails. So I just wanted to say, yes, I do take the quote unquote fours and remove them from the situation. So can we not talk about four shots or safety or, oh my God, the methanol for the rest of this video? Guys, can we do that? You've got these feints sitting here. What most people would suggest you do is take the feints and add them back into the still for your next run. Now, let's talk about when this happens and why you do it. So, we're going to add it back into the still at the point of the spirit run. So, if that means that you're mashing and doing a one and done run, you know, straight from mash, one run, and then that's your final product, you add it in at that point in time. If however you are doing stripping runs, do your stripping runs first and then add the feints in at the spirit run. Don't add them into the stripping runs, and definitely don't put your feints into the actual mash itself. I've seen people, I think people misunderstood the idea and have done that, and you know, it's just a bad idea. Don't do that. So why do we do this? Well, first of all, because there's still good stuff in there and you may as well get use of it, right? So what I mean by that is, as we know, distillation is not a perfect process. And when I say that, what I mean is it does not perfectly separate all the stuff that we want from all the stuff that we don't want. That's why we get flavor carryover in something like a whiskey. We've got all sorts of different things happening at different times. The heads that you end up with are not all heads. They're not just 100% heads and that's all there is in there. It's mostly heads with a little bit of hearts in it as well. And the same thing down the bottom on the tails. It's mostly tails or more tails. Or what I should say, I guess, is there's enough tails in it for you to perceive tails. There's enough of that funky tailsy stuff in it for your taste buds, your nose, whatever it happens to be, you know, if it's heads, the prickly feeling on your tongue. There's enough of that to trigger it for you to think that it's heads or tails. But there's still a whole lot, you know, of good stuff mixed into that jar that you've got. So why not recycle it, put it back in, and get some more of the good stuff out of it? And secondly, if you're running something like a whiskey or a rum, something where you're really trying to pull flavor from the wash itself and put it into the final product, you're actually going to end up bumping up or recycling flavor. So every time, especially with whiskey, right, like there's a lot of flavor down in the tails that you would like to be able to use, but it's just too tailsy to use. So you take those tails, you whack them into the next run, and you get to squeeze a little bit of that flavor out. There's a little bit more flavor in that pot than there would have been if you didn't use the feints. So you get to, you know, start pulling more and more flavor out as the generations of feints that you keep adding back in keep increasing. So let's simplify this to explain exactly what I mean here. Let's say you make whiskey 1 and you distill it. You're left with product that you're going to put, you know, onto oak or into barrels, and you're left with feints that you're not going to use right now. So now you make whiskey 2, and then you add the feints into that at the point of spirit distillation. So now you've got whiskey 1 and whiskey 2 in together, and you distill it again. Same thing happens. You end up with product you're going to keep and put onto wood, and product that you're not going to use right now, which is the feints. So you make whiskey 3. You get where I'm going with this, guys? It just keeps on going. So why don't I do this? Well, simply because of this channel, because of you guys watching at home, because the time it takes to make the same thing over and over and over again is a luxury that I just don't get when I'm out here in the shed and I'm making stuff. I need to be getting content out of it, you know, and let's face it, making the same thing 15 times just isn't that interesting at the end of the day. So I don't have, you know, 6 whiskeys in a row with the same mash where I can keep putting the feints back into the same product over and over again. What do? I take all of the feints from everything I make. Grappa feints, whiskey feints, feints with peat in it, feints with fruit, sugar wash, reflux, all of that stuff, all of it. I take all of it and throw it into one keg. When the keg gets full enough, I run it. As it is, like that. And the fun thing is, it turns into a interesting amalgamation of everything I've made in that last period of time. So if you want to see a video of me making this this all feints run, the last one I did, which we ended up calling Chimera, you can check the video out up here. And it was actually in that video, recording that video, where I realized that that process is really special to me because it highlights everything I've done over the last, you know, year or 6 months or however long it's been. It's cool and it's special to me. Now, there is one other way you can go about this, guys. You can kind of go halfway between what I described most people do if they're making the same product time and time again, and what I do, throwing them all in together, mixing everything in together. And that's a all feints run, but for a specific product. So instead of taking grappa and whiskey and rum and single malt and bourbon and all these things and throwing them all in together, what you can do is you can make the same whiskey over and over and over again. So you can have the same mash bill, for example, you make it 10 times, you take the feints from each one, you collect those, and then you do an all feints run, but only on that product. So you do an all feints run from 10, 15 different individual whiskeys you've made, but each of those whiskeys that you made with the same recipe. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I've heard people call it a Queen's run or a Queen's distillate, a all feints distillate, which is actually where I got the idea for the Chimera style all feints from. And people say that it's really freaking delicious. I haven't tried that yet. So if you guys at home do that, let me know. I would love to know your thoughts on the topic. All right, guys, I need to say a huge thank you to the Patreons. Thank you so much, Patreons. Thank you so much, Patreons. The reason I get to do this stuff is because of you. And trust me, guys, it's very much appreciated. It doesn't go unnoticed, and I thank you so much for your support. If you at home are appreciating these videos, if you find value in them and you'd like to help support the channel as well, you can go to chasethecraft.com/support to find out all the different ways that you can help out, one of them being Patreon, if it's right for you, of course. Just to sum up, guys, 3 different ways that I see that make real sense to deal with your feints. Number 1 is just to keep putting them back into the same recipe. If you know what you like, if you know that you like a certain style of bourbon, for example, and you just always make the same mash, this is a great way for you to do it. Just keep on keeping on, keep putting it back in, keep adding it back in, keep that circle going. Whiskey inception, basically, just keep it going. Number 2 is keep all your feints from everything. Put them in a keg in the corner, forget about them until you've got you know, 20 litres or whatever it is that you need to charge your still up with, whack them through the still and find out what happens. It is very, very interesting how the different flavours from the different runs spread out over the course of one, let's call it a Chimera run, after what I did in the past. And the third, of course, is to do the Queen's run or the All Feints run specifically for one type of spirit, which I think is a great idea as well. All right, so I hope this video helped someone out there in YouTube land. If it did, or you just enjoyed this video, please guys, give it a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. It really does. And if you want more of these videos, hit the subscribe button as well, hit the notification bell, so whenever I put a new video out, it'll hopefully, YouTube gods willing, pop up in your feed. All right guys, keep on chasing the craft. I'll catch you next time. See ya.